In 1990, my husband looked at me, broke, sweaty from hauling boxes into our first tiny apartment, and said with that stubborn grin of his, "If you survive me for 30 years, I'll give you a piece of the world." I laughed. I mean, come on, we couldn't even afford a honeymoon. We were living off boxed macaroni and hope. So, yeah, I rolled my eyes and kissed him anyway, because back then, love felt bigger than money. But I had no idea 31 years later, a banker would show up at my door with a black metal card and a letter that said only, "Go alone. Tell no one." And that moment, that was the first crack that would split my entire family in two. Before I take you into the real mess, and before I show you how my sons nearly destroyed themselves fighting over something that was never theirs, let me introduce myself. I'm Eleanor, 63, a woman who spent most of her life trying to hold a family together with grit, grace, and duct tape. I never wanted riches. I never asked for anything extravagant. All I ever wanted was peace, and maybe, just maybe, a little kindness from the people I raised. If you're new here, stick with me. I tell real stories that hit hard, stay with you, and remind you exactly why karma has perfect timing. Make sure you like, subscribe, and tap that bell, because you don't want to miss where this one goes. But let me take you back, not to the day the banker knocked, not yet, but to a few months before that. Back when things still looked normal. Back when my boys still called me Mom with love instead of calculation. Back when I didn't know that every holiday dinner, every smile across the table, every "Don't worry, Mom, we got you," was a mask. It started with little things, questions about paperwork, my sons hovering over my shoulder when I checked mail, comments like, "Mom, you shouldn't handle finances alone anymore," or "Dad would have wanted us to take care of everything." At the time, I brushed it off. I mean, they were my boys. They grew up helping me sort grocery coupons at the kitchen counter. Why would I question them? But something in my gut, something quiet and uneasy, kept whispering, "They're not checking on you, they're checking what you have." I didn't know it then, but that whisper was the beginning of a storm. A storm that wouldn't fully break until the morning I held that black metal card, and the secret my husband hid for 31 years finally exploded into daylight. And trust me, you won't believe what came next. Because the truth? My husband's promise wasn't romantic. It wasn't sweet. It was a warning, a lifeline, a test I didn't know I was taking. And my sons? Well, they failed it in spectacular fashion. A few months before that banker knocked on my door, something else happened. Something so small, so ordinary, I almost ignored it. But looking back, it was the first sign that my sons weren't worried about me. They were worried about what I might be holding. It was a Saturday, hot, quiet. The kind of morning where you water plants and let the world be simple for a minute. I was in my kitchen making coffee when my oldest son, Mark, walked in without knocking. He never knocked anymore. "Mom," he said, dropping into a chair, "we need to talk about arrangements." My stomach tightened. "Arrangements?" I asked. "For what?" Mark shrugged like it should have been obvious. "For, the future, your future, Dad's accounts, the house, everything." His tone wasn't gentle, wasn't protective. It was calculated, like he practiced the conversation in the car before coming in. I forced a smile. "Well, honey, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon." He didn't laugh, didn't smile. Instead, he leaned forward. "Mom, you're not getting younger. You shouldn't handle finances alone. Let me manage your accounts, just to help." A cold shiver rolled through me. Because here's the thing, he didn't know about the black metal card. He didn't know about the letter. He didn't know about the promise my husband made in 1990. So why? Why was he suddenly circling my life like a hawk? Before I could answer, the front door opened again. My younger son, Daniel, popped his head in. "Hey, Mom, you busy? Thought we'd sort some paperwork with you." Sort paperwork on a Saturday. Two sons who usually couldn't agree on pizza toppings now teaming up about my future? Something wasn't right. And the way they watched each other, then watched me, it was like they'd already discussed this, without me. I felt a knot form in my chest, a quiet emotional ache only a mother can understand. When did my boys stop seeing me and start seeing a checklist? But still, I didn't argue, didn't confront them. I just said, "Maybe another day, boys. I'm not feeling well." They exchanged a look. A quick one, a loaded one. Mark stood up slowly. "Well, don't take too long, Mom. Some decisions, they shouldn't wait." He patted my shoulder, and for the first time in my entire life, my own child's touch felt like a warning. I didn't know it yet, but my sons were already digging into something they had no right to touch. Something my husband had built in silence, something buried so deep its truth would shake all three of us, and by the time they discovered it, they'd already crossed a line they couldn't step back over. Because the moment that black metal card appeared on my doorstep, their real intentions and my husband's secret finally collided, and that was when everything began to unravel. 3 weeks after that strange Saturday visit, the energy around my sons shifted even more. It was subtle at first, a changed tone in their voices, a too careful choice of words, a softness that didn't feel like love, it felt like strategy. And mothers always feel the difference. One evening, just after sunset, I was sitting on the porch with a blanket over my legs, listening to the crickets, letting the quiet settle over me. It had been a long day, one of those days where you can't explain why, but your heart feels heavier than usual. That's when Daniel pulled up in his truck. No call, no warning, just headlights brushing over the yard like he owned the place. He hopped out with that nervous, too wide smile of his. "Hey, Mom, thought I'd stop by, bring you dinner. Chicken parm, your favorite." I steadied him. My youngest had never brought me dinner a day in his life, not even on my birthday. Still, I thanked him, and he followed me inside. While I plated the food, he hovered, not pacing, not fidgeting, hovering. Like he was waiting for a moment to jump into a conversation he didn't know how to start. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Mom, be honest, are you struggling, financially?" The fork slipped from my hand. "Struggling?" I repeated. "Daniel, where is this coming from?" He shifted his weight. "I mean, the house is old, you've got repairs, and you're retired, and you know Dad wasn't exactly wealthy." Something tightened behind my ribs. He didn't say it rudely, he didn't mean to hurt me, but it stung. Because ever since their father passed, I'd stretched myself thin to give those boys everything I could. And now they were circling me like they expected me to crumble. I forced a smile. "I'm all right, I promise." But Daniel didn't let it go. "Mom, Mark and I think it's time you let us look through Dad's old files. Make sure everything's in order, for your own protection." There it was again, that phrase. Your own protection. My skin prickled. "My protection from what?" I asked softly. He didn't have an answer. "Only a nervous swallow. That's what we're trying to figure out," he said. And suddenly, the air in the room felt different. He wasn't checking on me. He was checking on something else, something he thought I was hiding, something he and Mark were desperate to get ahead of. But the strangest part? I really didn't know what that something was. Not yet. Later that night, after he left, I sat in the living room with the lights off, thinking. Their urgency, their sudden interest in my future, their push to access their father's things. It wasn't random. It wasn't brotherly concern. It was fear. Fear of missing something their father left behind. Fear I might know more than they did. And as it turned out, their suspicion wasn't just a hunch. Something was coming. Something their father had set in motion decades before, and it was already on its way to my doorstep. 2 days after Daniel's visit, Mark showed up. No text, no call, just the sound of his engine crunching up the driveway right as I was finishing my morning coffee. My stomach dropped, because when both of my sons suddenly visit me within 48 hours, something was brewing, and it wasn't love. Mark walked in like he was doing a home inspection. Looking at the walls, the floors, my old wooden desk, Dad's filing cabinet, his eyes lingered there too long. "Mom," he said, voice sweet but stretched thin, "we need to talk, like really talk." I braced myself. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, his whole posture screaming concern. But his eyes? They were calculating. "Look," he began, "we know Dad wasn't great with money. We know he made questionable choices." My chest tightened. Not because he was wrong. My husband had been a dreamer, reckless at times, but because of the way Mark said it. Like he was warming up to something bigger. "And," he continued, "we think there might be loose ends he didn't tie up. Loose ends." There it was again, the phrase Daniel used. Almost word for word. I stayed quiet. Mothers learn more by listening than speaking. "We just want to make sure," Mark added, "that you don't get blindsided later." I softly laughed. "Blindsided by what, sweetheart?" He hesitated, then leaned forward. Dad promised you something, didn't he? Years ago? Something about the future? Every muscle in my body froze, because that line, that question, was too specific. Why would you ask me that? I whispered. Mark ran a hand through his hair. Because, he exhaled, Daniel remembered something. Something Dad told you before we moved out. And if he promised you something big, something financial, his voice dipped, then it affects us too. There it was. No sugarcoating, no dancing around it. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about their inheritance. I forced a steady breath. Your father promised lots of things, I said gently. Most of them were jokes. Mark didn't buy it. His jaw tightened. Mom, if there's something we need to know, you should tell us now. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I'm not hiding anything, I said softly. Mark studied me, really studied me, like a man trying to read a locked box. Okay, he finally said, but he didn't sound convinced. He stood, dusted off his jeans, and walked toward the door. Before stepping out, he turned back. Just be prepared, Mom, because we're digging through Dad's old stuff this weekend, and whatever's in there, we're gonna find it. He left, but the tension stayed behind, clinging to the walls. And that night, as I lay in bed, I realized something chilling. My sons weren't looking for answers. They were looking for a claim. But what they didn't know was that the real answer, the one that would shake them to their core, wasn't in that old filing cabinet at all. It was already on its way to me. 3 days later, I woke up to a sound I hadn't heard in years, my landline ringing. Only 2 people ever called it anymore, telemarketers and banks. So when I heard the voice on the other end, my heart gave a strange little jump. Mrs. Turner? We have something that requires your signature and your presence in person. Her tone wasn't casual. It wasn't routine. It was careful. I sat up straighter. What kind of something? I asked. She hesitated, long enough for my pulse to spike. It's sensitive, ma'am, and it appears to be tied to instructions your husband left behind. My breath caught, because for the second time in 1 week, someone had mentioned my husband's mystery intentions. And none of these people, not Daniel, not Mark, not this bank rep, had any idea the others were asking the same questions. I tightened my robe. When do you need me there? I asked quietly. As soon as possible, preferably today. I swallowed. All right, I'll come. But before she hung up, she added something strange, something that sent a chill right down the center of my spine. And, Mrs. Turner, please come alone. After the call, I just sat there for a moment, hands wrapped around a mug I suddenly couldn't feel. My husband had been gone for a year, a full year. So why were the pieces of some old promise only now starting to surface? And why did people keep telling me to come alone? I grabbed my purse, took a breath, headed toward the door. But as I reached for my keys, a notification pinged on my phone. A message from Mark. Mom, don't forget, we're stopping by later. We found some interesting stuff in Dad's lockbox. We think you should see it. My chest tightened. They were closing in from both sides. The bank with its quiet urgency, and my sons with their sudden hunger for whatever loose ends they thought belonged to them. As I drove toward the bank, my mind raced through every version of the past, the early years of struggle. The late nights my husband spent at the kitchen table with bills scattered everywhere. The promises he whispered like jokes, one day, honey, one day, I'll give you a piece of the world. I'd always laughed it off, because dreams were free and we were broke. But now, something was stirring that I couldn't ignore. And as I pulled into the parking lot, my stomach twisted with one terrifying thought. Whatever my husband left behind, my sons were already trying to get their hands on it. Before I walked in, I paused. Because from this moment on, nothing in my family was going to stay the same. Inside that bank, I was about to hear the first clue, a clue so shocking I'd have to question everything I thought I knew about my own marriage. And it would set off a chain reaction my sons never saw coming. Elaine met me in the lobby with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Turner, right this way. Her heels clicked fast, like she didn't want anyone overhearing what she was about to show me. She led me into a small glass office, shut the door, and lowered the blinds. My heartbeat thumped in my ears. People don't close blinds for normal banking business. She sat, folded her hands, and spoke softly. We received a file this morning that wasn't in our system before. It was time released. Time released? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, she said. Your husband created it. It was programmed to appear 1 year after his date of passing. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Time released? This man, the same man who used to duct tape our shoes when money was tight, had planned something big enough to trigger a delayed financial alert? Elaine reached under the desk and placed a sealed envelope in front of me, thick, heavy, my name handwritten across the front. Before you open it, she said, there's something else. She slid a black metal card, the same kind of card the banker delivered days earlier, across the table. Mrs. Turner, this card was registered as inactive until this morning. Now it's fully active. My breath hitched. And, she continued carefully, your husband left one instruction tied to the card. She turned her monitor toward me. On the screen was a single sentence typed in bold, go alone. Del no one. My stomach dropped. There it was again. That same warning. That same secrecy. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a banking glitch. My husband had planned something specific, and I was the only person allowed to know. I stared at the envelope. My fingertips tingled when I touched it. What is this? I asked quietly. Elaine shook her head. We weren't permitted to open it. Whatever's inside, it's for you only. She hesitated. And Mrs. Turner, I strongly suggest you do exactly what he instructed. A shiver ran up my spine, because I suddenly realized this wasn't just about money. It felt like a path, one he built for me long before he died. I tucked the envelope and the card into my purse, my hands trembling as I zipped it shut. When I stood, Elaine gently touched my arm. One more thing, she whispered. If anyone asks about this file or the card, do not answer. You could put yourself at risk. Risk? Why would I be at risk? She exhaled. Because whoever knows about this wasn't meant to. As I walked back to my car, the late afternoon sun felt too bright, too sharp. And just as I reached for my door handle, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Mom, we need to talk. It's about Dad. And about something we found. My hands went cold. My sons were coming in from one direction. My husband's secret was pulling me in another. And I was right in the middle, with the only key to the truth in my purse. What I didn't know, not yet, was that opening that envelope would flip my entire family upside down and put my sons in a panic they never expected. Daniel's text kept glowing on my phone like a warning flare. Mom, we need to talk. It's about Dad, and about something we found. My breath caught in my chest, because the timing was too perfect, too sharp, too suspicious. I sat in my car, the air conditioner humming, my purse heavy beside me, heavy with that envelope, that card, that secret. And for the first time since this all began, I felt afraid. Not of my sons, but of what they might know, or worse, what they thought they knew. I dialed Daniel back, my voice barely steady. Sweetheart, what's going on? He didn't waste a second. Mom, you need to come over. Tonight. We found something in Dad's office. His tone was clipped, tense, not the usual distracted rush of a man juggling work and kids. No, this sounded like a man who believed he'd stumbled onto something big. Is everything okay? I asked. A pause. Then, just come over, please. Please. That word alone made my stomach twist. My sons don't say please unless something is already burning. I hung up, rested my head against the steering wheel, and exhaled shakily. Because I suddenly felt it, this invisible tug of war. My husband's secret pulling me in one direction, my sons pulling me in another, and me, right there in the center, the only one holding both ends of the rope. On the drive home, memories kept rising in my chest like bubbles in boiling water. My husband sitting at his old wooden desk, paperwork scattered, that same faraway focus he used to have when he was planning something only he understood. He used to smile at me and say, some things aren't ready yet, honey, but when they are, you'll know. God, what had he been building all those years? By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun was dipping low, warm orange light spilling over the house. I sat there for a long moment, gripping the keys, trying to calm the shaking in my hands. Then, my phone buzzed again. This time, Ethan. Mom, come now. Don't open anything without us. We need to go through Dad's stuff together. My heart dropped. Don't open anything without us. They didn't know about the envelope, not yet, but something in their tone sent cold ripples up my spine. Had they found something my husband never meant them to find? Had they discovered a piece of the secret, but only the part meant to mislead them? I stepped into my house, locked the door behind me, and placed the purse on the kitchen table. I stared at it like it was a live wire. Inside was the only thing my sons weren't supposed to see, and outside there were two grown men acting like the world had just shifted under their feet. What I didn't know, not then, was that by the time I reached my son's house, one of them would be waiting with a folder he should have never touched, and the look on his face, it would tell me everything. Daniel's house sat on the hill like it always had, calm, warm, familiar, but tonight, it felt wrong, too quiet, too still, like the air itself knew something was about to break. I parked, stepped out slowly, and my heart thudded hard against my ribs. Because both my sons' cars were already in the driveway. They were waiting. Together. That never happened unless things were bad. The front door swung open before I even reached it. Daniel stood there, jaw tight, eyes guarded, holding a folder. A thick one. "Mom," he said, voice low. "We need to talk inside." That tone, controlled, tense, rehearsed, it chilled me deeper than any anger could have. I stepped in, and there was Ethan by the dining table, pacing like a man trying to burn a hole in the floor. When he finally looked up at me, his expression wasn't soft or warm or relieved. It was sharp, suspicious, almost territorial. "Sit," Ethan said. No greeting, no hug, no "Hi, Mom." Just that one clipped word, "Sit." My knees felt weak, but I lowered myself into the chair. Daniel put the folder on the table. He slid it toward me. "We found this," he said quietly, "in Dad's locked drawer." The hairs on the back of my neck rose, because that drawer was one my husband never let anyone touch, not even me. Slowly, I opened the folder. Pages stared back at me, documents, signatures, letters written in my husband's handwriting, but they weren't familiar. They weren't what I had been given. This was something else entirely, something he left behind for them. What is all this?" I whispered. Ethan crossed his arms, jaw tight. "You tell us." My stomach twisted, because I suddenly understood the worst possible thing. My sons believed I was hiding something from them. Daniel leaned in. "Why didn't you tell us Dad had accounts overseas?" My breath caught. Accounts overseas? That wasn't part of what the banker had shown me. That wasn't part of the envelope. "I didn't know," I said softly. "Really?" Ethan snapped. "Because according to this," he tapped the folder harshly, "Dad made you the executor of everything, not us, not jointly, just you." My pulse hammered in my ears. "Your father trusted me," I managed to say. Daniel exhaled, frustrated. "Mom, Dad wrote letters to you, private letters. He made decisions none of us knew about. And now a banker shows up? With a metal card? With instructions you won't talk about?" My blood ran cold. They knew. Not everything, but enough to be dangerous. I swallowed hard, fighting the tremor in my voice. "Boys, I need you to trust me. Your father left things unfinished. He wanted—" Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "He wanted what, Mom? Another secret? Another surprise? Another decision that affects our lives and you won't explain?" I froze. Because that anger, that bitterness, I had felt it building for years. But now it stood right in front of me like a wall. And behind that wall was something far worse. They were ready to fight me for something they didn't even understand. What I didn't know, as I sat there trembling, was that my sons had already taken a step I couldn't undo, a step that would explode by morning and put their entire future at risk. I didn't sleep that night, not a minute. My sons' voices kept replaying in my head, sharp, defensive, almost like they were preparing for a fight I hadn't even realized we were having. When I woke before sunrise, the house was cold, quiet, heavy. Like the air itself was waiting for the blow I didn't see coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Mom, we need to talk again. This can't wait." My throat tightened. Another text came seconds later. "This one from Ethan. Be home. We're stopping by with something you need to sign." Sign? A chill crawled across my skin. People only wrote text like that when they'd already made decisions behind your back. I sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug I wasn't drinking, heart pounding in my ears, because I suddenly realized my sons weren't confused. They were preparing for control, and they believed I was standing in their way. By 7:30, I heard their car in the driveway. Both of them, together again. When they walked inside, they didn't hug me, didn't ask if I'd slept. They looked determined, focused. And Ethan was holding another folder, thinner this time, but somehow more threatening. "Mom," he said, "we're not here to fight. We just need clarity." My stomach twisted. Clarity is what people ask for right before they flip your whole world upside down. Daniel pulled out a chair for himself but stayed standing for a moment, hands on the backrest like he wasn't sure if he wanted to sit or pace. He cleared his throat. "Last night, after we talked, we went through Dad's old files. All of them." My pulse jumped. "All of them?" I whispered. Ethan nodded. Everything, his financial records, his legal documents, his old safety deposit box papers. That box. My heart dropped. I knew exactly what was inside the safety deposit box, because the banker had told me. But my sons, they shouldn't have been anywhere near it. Daniel finally lowered himself into the chair but leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on mine. "Mom, we found instructions Dad left. One's addressed to you, ones you never told us about." My breath hitched. What instructions? Ethan opened the folder. A stack of photocopies sat inside, papers with my husband's handwriting visible even from where I sat. "We make copies," he said flatly. "We aren't keeping secrets. You shouldn't either." The words stung more than I expected, because somehow, in their minds, I was suddenly the untrustworthy one. Daniel pushed one page toward me. "Mom, Dad outlined something big, bigger than anything we understood. And if you're involved, even accidentally, we need legal control before things get messy." Legal control. Those two words cracked through me like lightning. My hands shook. You want control over your father's estate?" Daniel didn't answer. Ethan did. "We want to protect what's ours." A beat of silence fell, thick, suffocating. Then another hit. What I didn't know, not yet, was that while my sons were pressuring me at that table, someone else had been watching. Someone who understood exactly what that metal card meant, and by morning would set off a chain reaction that put everything they hoped to claim at risk. For a long moment, nobody breathed. My sons sat across from me, one gripping the folder like a weapon, the other tapping his fingers the way he did when he was nervous but pretending he wasn't. And me? I sat perfectly still, heart thudding behind my ribs, waiting for whatever storm they had planned next. "Mom," Daniel finally said, "we're not the bad guys here. We just want to make sure nothing gets out of control." Out of control. Funny how kids only use that phrase when they're the ones losing control. Ethan slid another paper forward. "We talked to a lawyer last night. He said it's better if we take temporary management of anything connected to Dad's estate, just until everything's sorted." My breath caught. Temporary management was just a polite way of saying, "Hand everything over, Mom. We'll take it from here." I looked at their faces, older now, tired, anxious, and I felt something crack inside me, not anger, not fear, just disappointment. "Boys," I said softly, "your father trusted me for decades. He planned this for me. Why are you so sure he didn't?" They exchanged a look, that silent, brother-to-brother language that always felt like a door closing in my face. "Because," Ethan said quietly, "you've never handled something this big before." There it was. Not said cruelly, but still cruel. I stood up slowly, palms flat on the table. "My whole life," I said, voice shaking, "I handled more than you'll ever understand. I survived things your father and I never told you. And you're sitting here acting like I should just roll over and let you take whatever you want." Daniel winced. Mom guilt still lived somewhere in him, even if he tried to bury it. Before he could speak, a soft knock hit the front door. 3 taps. Even. Calm. I felt a ripple of dread. Daniel frowned. "You expecting someone?" "No," I murmured. When I opened the door, my sons right behind me, a sharply dressed woman stood on my porch, holding a slim leather case. "Mrs. Carter?" she asked. "I'm here on behalf of your husband's private holdings." My son stiffened instantly. Private holdings. Not estate. Not accounts. Not trust. Something they had no knowledge of. She continued, ignoring their stunned expressions. We need to review several urgent matters with you alone. Daniel stepped forward. Anything involving my father involves us. The woman gave him a polite, razor-thin smile. I'm afraid that's not correct. She opened her case, revealing a document with my name alone printed in bold at the top. My sons froze, their confidence drained like water spilling off a table. Mrs. Carter, she said gently, what your husband arranged was meant solely for you, and as of this morning, the situation has shifted in a way that puts several people's futures at risk. She glanced pointedly at my sons. Both swallowed hard. The woman stepped closer. We need to begin immediately. I looked back at Daniel and Ethan, the same boys whose scraped knees I'd kissed, whose nightmares I soothed, who once believed I could fix anything, now standing there realizing they weren't the ones holding the power. And as I followed her into the living room, I knew whatever came next was going to change our family forever. And honestly, they had no idea what was coming. But if you enjoy stories where karma doesn't just show up, it shows up with receipts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around. And speaking of karma, if you haven't watched my previous story, the one where my granddaughter called me a burden in a crowded restaurant and by morning their entire future was hanging by a thread, it's right here on your screen. Click it. Believe me, you do not want to miss how that one unfolded.